Welcome to MidwestCon 2023. I'm Rob Richardson. I'm your host. It's an honor to be here. Honor to also work with BSL Group, who is teaming up with us to do this live podcast. Many of you know, if you watch the podcast Disruption Now, we have conversations that talk about disrupting common narratives and constructs that really challenge how we think about things. And today is not going to be any different. With me as my guest is Javier Viaña.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now.
So AI is no different from the data that we have. It's just a matter of condensing it in a certain way and providing the right outputs for that, for a particular task, right? But it would be, if I can explain it, this is a very common example, right? It's like a box. Get things inside, process them, and cook it, and then process and get an output, something out of it.
Who's cooking?
Who's cooking? That's a good question.
That's the question.
Yes. So it's usually, well, you can host your AI in cloud. You can have it in your local PC. It's usually a computer, right? A program, an executable program, an algorithm, right? That is running through all the different steps that you have there. But it's just following the recipe, like all these little things that you do inside that final great dish. Then that's what you.
So your passion is the pursuit of knowledge. Make sure it sounds like knowledge is shared, disseminated among humankind, which I share that. And I believe we share the passion for innovation, sharing of that knowledge. So I know for myself and for you, there's a lot of excitement about this new intrigue about artificial intelligence and technology, but there's also some concern. So I'd like to talk about what you are doing with Rezon. What problem is Rezon trying to solve?
Yeah, so before I get to that, perhaps I can just give a brief overview.
Yeah, what is Rezon?
Yeah, or even before Rezon, I would say, what is the current state of AI and what are we facing right? Because that would locate a little bit more.
Sure.
Like right now, we are facing a global emergency. I said this in the talk recently.
A global emergency.
Yes, in terms of AI, I think we are reaching a point where we are abusing of black box AI, which we call it. It's opaque AI that we don't understand.
Black box opaque AI. Okay,
yeah,
explain that definitely.
It's not transparent. Like it's basically something that we don't understand the way it's asserting. Like it's becoming a bigger problem because the models we are using.
The example you used earlier, cooking, we don't know
it would be
what's cooking or what the materials are that are being used to cook.
Exactly, and like how these ingredients are combined. It's a great dish at the end, and it's beautiful. And it tastes as you want and everything, but the way you reach that output is usually concerning because there's a lot of mathematical operations behind the scenes, and there's not a clear path to that. And humans, we are having a hard time understanding or verifying these outputs, because when you start implementing AI into important capabilities and you start deciding what is the amount of oxygen you are administering to a certain patient in a hospital, in an intensive care unit using an AI, and that patient dies for whatever reason, you want to know why. You want to know what were the inputs that triggered this result and how, right? And those things, I think, we are not taking care of them right now. Everybody's focused on performance.
Everyone's focused on how can you get the most the most output in the quickest manner.
Yes.
The most efficient manner.
Yes.
Not the most ethical manner. Not the most transparent manner.
That's true.
Right. And why do people? I'm with you. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
How do we get people to care about that? Right. We're in a society, and I'm not disagreeing with you that it's important. I'm with you, right? We're having this conversation. But of course, we're in a society that believes in fast results, quick returns, and more returns.
Yeah.
So how are we making the case that this is something that you should pay attention to? Like, how are we making that case, given we know that balance? We know the push, what you said is absolutely true.
Yeah, it's essential to understand what's going on. But why? Well, when you are using AI and you're starting to do inference with the AI, you can have biased decision making. A lot, like not just decision making, but like the inference itself could be biased in a certain way. And what I'm trying to say is that if we have explainability in an AI system, we can detect bias, for example, on things like that, right? If we are not aware of what's happening and there's implicit, bad things going on,
yes,
those are gonna have, the end user is gonna suffer them.
Yes.
And we might not see that suffering right now in the short term, but as we implement it more and more and we start integrating AI in every single, day-to-day task, I think we're gonna see it ourselves. We are starting to see it, in some social media.
I'm about to say, I think we've seen. I mean, you were getting right to we must be on my wavelength here. Like,
yeah.
We have seen it. Like, it's not. We have seen the destructive nature of what an algorithm that we don't understand, that we don't know, can affect us. What's obviously new is that it's now exponentially able to produce things at a level. So, with social media alone, I've said this on my past podcast, it literally exacerbates the worst conditions of human nature sometimes, right? The vanity of ourselves, the ability to be jealous, to divide amongst one another, because what the algorithm is doing is very simple with social media. Their goal isn't enlightenment. Their goal isn't to encourage us to get together in society. It's not to inform.
No.
It is to get you engaged. And so the goal is to get clicks, and the goal is to trigger you, and the goal is to keep you coming, and they're going to repeat what you want to see, which isn't necessarily which doesn't necessarily align with the truth, doesn't necessarily align with what's even best for you, but it keeps you entertained.
Yeah.
And people like that until they don't. And we've seen what happened with elections and things like that. So you're right. So what other problems can you foresee not having transparent, explainable AI?
Well, it's many of them, right? But especially when you start connecting AIs together and like you allow them to operate based on the outputs of the previous and keep building this chain, right? That this is called multimodality, and you can face an output that has been processed in a lot of different ways, but you have absolutely no idea how this output, like it's literally like a being. We can think of AI as a type of living creature that is not. It doesn't need oxygen like us.
Right.
It's something that, and there's a lot of researchers that believe that there's that level of consciousness already achieved in many AI models. But the problem is that I want to back up.
You said a lot there, if I can.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we can explain this to a way for people that I need to understand. Like you've because I know you're deep into this research, and I want to make sure the audience understands. So I like to use analogies to make sure I understand. You talked about multimodality, and I think that how I'm understanding it is basically you have a lot. It's like raising a child, let's say. And you put a lot into that child, and we don't know if there's you're teaching that child bad habits, and it's compounding on itself to create a new entity that can cause a lot of damage in the world, right? And it seems like that can be a good analogy for what you're saying. Like we don't know how the data, what's happening, and that's going to create this entity that's going to create more problems for us because we didn't look at it on the front end to be transparent.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It kind of, yeah. I kind of.
I'm sure it's not a perfect analogy.
No, but it explains it very well. So now that we can agree that there's this big issue, right? And we can see it more and more every day. Now, how do we solve it? That's the question, right?
That's the question.
How can we?
You asked the question. I'm interested.
There's not a clear answer, and the reasons are various. One of them is like it's a very complex mathematical problem. Sometimes the AI is advancing very fast. You always need to keep up to date with the current technologies. But one way to solve it, and the one we are working on at Rezon, is trying to study what's going on inside the model you have your AI, we can think of it as the box. It has been trained. There's other people that are trying to create new boxes that are transparent from the ground up, but that's difficult to scale because everybody's using already neural networks and very complex.
So there's the one solution. So it's important to understand the problem you're trying to solve. The problem you're trying to solve is how do you make AI more transparent? And you say the one way is people are trying to create new models, which you're saying seems to be crazy. Not crazy, but whatever. Very challenging. Given that the infrastructure is already there. It's like trying to build a new nation.
That's what I did for my PhD, for example, and a lot of academic people are working on that end as well. But it takes a lot, and industry hasn't adopted any of these paths.
Right.
Sometimes it takes a whole year to develop something.
Yeah, it's like building. I tell people because I do a blockchain, but there's similar stuff in that. If you want to build a new blockchain network, you got to build a whole new highway or a whole new nation, and that's a lot to start from. But you're saying integrated with the current infrastructure.
Let's take whatever it's already pre-trained, and try to make it more transparent.
Your technology would take current technology that's out there in AI and make it transparent. So let's say everyone's talking ChatGPT, of course, as if that's the only generative model there ever was, but that's just what it is, because that was the first to get the conscience of the public and made it in a user-friendly way. Theoretically, would Reason be able to pierce into that algorithm, if you will, to be able to tell the public this is actually what's going on behind the black box? Theoretically, is that what you're looking at?
That's the ideal scenario. We're going towards that. Where we work right now is on the smaller problems, the classical neural networks that have been used in a variety of applications, that the medical use case that I was telling you about, prediction of oxygen, for example, and trying to explain what were the inputs that triggered this result and how each of the inputs contributed. And from there you can tell a lot. You can tell whether one of the inputs was contributing too much and perhaps you were biasing the entire reasoning. You can tell whether this combination of inputs in this particular way was leading to a wrong outcome or a less confident outcome. You can trust more the output if you understand that logic, right? And we go towards that direction of applying it to ChatGPT and generative AI. But right now we're working on more classical problems. You have a big neural network, huge, sometimes millions of parameters. So it's doing a great job predicting or whatever you want, right? But you don't understand why those predictions are being made like that, and you want to have that level of transparency. And that's becoming now a requirement in many places. In Europe, for example, the GDPR and the AI Act are...
Explain what that is.
General Data Protection Regulation. It's a very popular regulatory framework in Europe for AI practitioners, because it's kind of making us design AI in a different way, if that makes sense, more transparent.
Right.
I'm working
whereas the US is do whatever you want right now.
It's taking a while, but I think there's going to be more regulations coming into play over the next years, and we're going to see them. I think they are necessary, right? Especially when we start using AI for taking decisions that may affect human lives.
That's absolutely right.
So
yes.
So
that's the reason. Just hold that thought, because I want to just...
Sure.
I think when you think about why this is so important, this is not just entertainment. There's also reasons to not want to do false entertainment and things like that, because entertainment can lead to things. But we're talking serious decisions. We're going to use AI. I know we're going to have someone from Thales on to talk about that. We use AI within the battlefield. We already do. And how are we evaluating those decisions that AI is making? Is it just about what's the most efficient? It's not necessarily what's the most humane. So those are things we have to grapple with. You talked about medical uses. We already use, people don't know, we're using AI a lot, people. We already have been, much more than just ChatGPT.
Deciding whether you have credit or you get credit or not, for example.
Who gets credit or not.
And based on what were the inputs that, how those inputs played.
Like you said, sometimes they're biased.
They are.
They are biased often, right?
And I want to make a point here, if you don't mind. Sorry for interjecting.
No,
but
go.
There's several types of bias. You can have bias in the data, right? Like the data is biased in many ways in the world. And you can have great software engineers, feature engineers working hard to make sure that it's clean and balanced and like perfectly leveled, so that when you put the AI in place and you train the algorithm, it's the best quality data that you can have. You can do so much always. But then the learning of the AI itself, because the AI learns, you have to train it. At the very beginning, it's everything initialized randomly, but you train it over time. At the learning stage, you can implicitly extract bias, or even if you have done a great job in the feature engineering and the cleaning, you can still generate biased reasonings, because the learning happens very randomly. And right now, there's really no way for us to understand whether your inference is being biased or not. You have done a great job in the feature engineering. Your data is clean, you know that. But now, when you train your AI and you're making inference, you might not actually get, you might get to a biased reasoning.
So hold on, you're saying, because I think often, I think the case is the data is biased because people that enter the data are biased, right? So there's one of the...
Well, the hardware as well, the sensors. I mean, I'm not talking about human bias, but like...
That's what I'm trying to understand, so that's my question I'm getting to. You're assuming that the input has, the people that are actually entering the data, inputting the data, have taken precautions to make sure that it's not biased and done things intentionally that way. Mm-hmm. You're saying even then, after that's happened, it can still come up with the biased decisions.
Yes, exactly. Even after the taking of the data, after the processing of the data and having it clean, you can still get bias in the AI. And that's because the learning, it's very random, very stochastic. If you train another AI later on the same data, you're going to have a different AI. And it's going to have some difference. That difference is bias. I mean, not directly, but in a way, you can start getting different outputs in different ways, and one AI might be considering some things more, another one some other things differently. That different process is just like you and me. We are understanding whatever problem we are talking about in different ways.
Sure.
And we can both give a similar answer. It's not going to be the same. We are taking into account different things in our brains. So that difference, that's the one I'm talking about. There's no way right now, no way for us to really see what's that reasoning. And that's what we do at Rezon.
So first of all, it's admirable work and I appreciate it.
We are trying. I don't know if we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's not a lot of people working on this.
No, there's not.
Difficult. We have to educate the people. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly right.
So it's not a market like, we're predicting, this or that. No, we are trying to do what nobody is.
No, it's important work, but this is what I'm getting to, right? You're going up against the current trajectory of let's figure out how to commercialize this and worry about all that
performance.
Later. Like let's worry about ethics, let's worry about transparency after we made $10 billion, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance against that? Like really, what is your message against that?
Yeah, I think it's all part of what we want to leave to the next generation of people, because when they are facing huge infrastructures that are already in big companies functioning very well, and then you have the problem of transparency bias or whatever, and really replacing all that and like leaving them with that burden, I think it's a big issue. So, AI is going to stay for life.
I mean, we're AI's here, like,
and it's going to be in every single thing you can think of that has an electronic circuit, like even light bulbs. This room is going to be controlled, the light intensity is going to be controlled by the conversation and the measuring how well the conversation is going, and maybe go a little lower when, those kind of things. We're going to see it everywhere. It's just a matter of time. So, like, being able to really trace that reasoning is essential. It can make a difference.
Yeah.
Because the way I like to think about it is, if we are taking decisions based on an output that we don't understand how that processing happened, who's really taking the decision? The human or the machine?
So a couple things on this. Like one, I've talked about this in the past, talked about it 2 years ago. I think it's important for us to continue to innovate. But I think your best case that you put forward in terms of people that are focused on the return is this. If we don't build trust within AI, you can get a reaction in the opposite direction.
In the opposite.
Where people, there's a mass just backlash against innovation in AI that really puts us behind, because we live in a democracy, and at the end of the day, if people decide that they want to elect leaders that say no AI at all because we don't trust it, that can cause greater damage. So I would say building trust right now is paramount to make sure that we can continue to innovate. Sometimes it's hard to tell people that your building could be on fire until it gets on fire, which is the hardest challenge, right? Yeah. People like, it's not sexy to put out fires, but it's better. But people only focus on putting out fires, I should say, versus actually preventing them.
Yeah. And
what you're trying to do is prevent it. And I guess we got to just find people that really understand how big of an issue this could be. So I have another question with this. What does happen when the algorithms know us better than we know ourselves? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Well, I mean, it's just like any other technology, I guess. It depends. If I may clarify a little more the question, are you asking whether the algorithm is learning information about us that we don't know, or what do you?
It's a good question. I would just say, if the algorithms actually know us better than we know ourselves,
like telling us like you should go for a weekend in in a lake or whatever, or like advising us to do something that we never thought of, that maybe it's what we want, but no.
Have you seen, I'm gonna give you an example, so let me give you a concrete example since we're going to go into a weird alternative Black Mirror universe.
Okay.
So there was this show on Netflix, and it was called, I think it's called The One.
I've never seen it.
Okay, it's fine. I was lost on a weekend doing something. I don't know. Somehow found extra time that I never had and decided to go into.
What was it about?
What it was about is it was using essentially artificial intelligence and some type of data algorithm to help you find who your actual quote unquote match or one was. Right? And so you have people that are already with significant others and other things, and then they got curious, they got on this, and then it got them to leave the stuff. That's a wild thing, but some of them were content before that. But when they went into this, kind of like social media, people looked at like, oh, I can look on here, and I look. There's now 10,000 options. It's not really 10,000 options, but you feels that way. That's what I'm saying. Is that a good thing for us, that the algorithm might know what motivates you, what triggers you, and it might do what social media has done in an amplified way?
Yeah, I think I understand the question.
Okay,
now.
yes.
So,
sorry, I was a long
explanation. No. It was right on point. But I like to clarify because I have a different idea for this one. And so
you're a researcher, I get it.
Yeah.
You figure out every angle.
Okay, no, but seriously, I think it's it helps to have some sort of like automated decision making in your life for sure. But I'm a very, very classical person. I like to have some, uncertainties every now and then. And there are some things that you I don't know, I don't like automating. But yeah, I guess it really depends on where you want to use the AI. But I guess we are more concerned about AI being used for our own things. But really, AI is in many other like processes that doesn't directly impact our lives. Maybe right away, like maybe on the guidance, navigation, and control of an like an airplane, perhaps, But like you have a lot of like maybe remaining useful life prediction of like different components that you have in the aircraft, or like there's some that are out there. All the systems are starting to integrate AI, and really the ones that you're talking about, I guess it's more like on our. They might change the course of our life, I guess, right?
I think they could. I mean,
small ones now.
Yeah, these are small ones now. I say that dramatic example. It could, never like happen.
Finding or
whatever, because I worry less about, Terminator. People like a Terminator and stuff, and Matrix. I don't think per se that's what it's going to turn into.
Every time I have a conversation on explainable AI, it always diverts.
Yeah, of course, it always goes there. But I know better than to go there. I'm not going to have. I'm not going to have a Terminator conversation. I promise. I don't think that's the likely future. What is possible though is that, because I'm seeing how social media has already got people used to it. I'm not anti-social media. I'm not. I'm pro-social media, but I'm pro, what I like to say, I'm pro-informed consent. What I believe has happened with a lot of social media is that we did not have informed consent.
At least not for the AI part.
No, not for the AI. We did not know that an algorithm was being...
Which information, how.
Yes.
So that's what we were trying to
Exactly.
achieve.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes. Hopefully, I mean, that's also perhaps one of the main reasons why we are doing this is to raise awareness about like this technology. And there's other people that are building other technologies that I believe can help advance transparency in AI. But really what we are building at Rezon, I think it's a step forward on that, like really giving the power to the user, to the final user, and to the end customer that can understand how certain inference or predictions are being made, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's very valuable. That's the value, right? At the end of the day, you want to make sure how everything happened.
It's about, again, going back to informed consent.
Yeah.
Like I believe when we got on social media and everything else, it was originally to connect with our friends and to know what's going on with our friends and others. And it evolved into, I mean, I guess it evolved into media. I like to say, even though I'm a media person, I try not to be a clickbait person. Maybe that's why I don't have 10 million followers, but it is it is what it is. But I'll say that often media is to the mind what sugar is to the body oftentimes, particularly news, right? And how we consume it. News is to the mind what sugar is to the body. It's, you get a hit form and it feels good emotionally for a second, but then it really drags you down. And that's what social media a lot has done with people, and they don't realize it, right? And and I think the challenge is, how do we have informed consent? I'm not saying get rid of social media. I'm not saying get rid of AI. We're saying together, how do we create a more transparent world where people understand the decisions that they're making and are truly given the autonomy? Because I feel as if you're saying if we don't do this, we're going to have less autonomy and less understanding of the world that's happening around us.
That is correct. I think so too, and it's essential, right? We'll see where it goes. I mean, with all this integration of generative AI, awareness in AI has increased significantly, and I think it's going to be going in that direction, right?
Okay.
Everybody's going to request it, I guess.
A couple of rapid fire questions as we get ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
What does the legacy of Javier look like?
Of my legacy? Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm in my late 20s. I don't know yet my legacy, but...
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, my biggest academic life has been focused on explainable AI, working with Dr. Kelly Cohen and other people as well. But if I can do anything that is meaningful, I believe it might be within the field of explainable AI. That's also why I'm trying to do Rezon and all this. It just makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question. If you had a theme.
I don't know if I answered very well.
No, it's fine. Whatever. It's fine. It's good. You answered honestly. If you had a theme that was the story of your life or the saying, what would that saying or theme be?
I have one that I really like. It's not mine, but the world is like a book, and those who do not travel only read one page.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. The world is like a book, and those who don't travel is like reading one page.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
I think it's really important to travel and really to get to know different cultures and understanding how they work, how they socialize, how they do everything, and from there you can learn so much and get new ideas. Every time I travel, I get inspired, and many of my biggest ideas have been a consequence of a great trip.
Oh, I completely agree. I tell people I spent a lot of my 20s traveling, and if I could go back, I wouldn't have spent it any differently. Like, there's nothing more valuable than experiences. Like, if you have $10 billion and you haven't traveled, you don't have any wealth. You just, in fact, you're a prison of your resources, because traveling is the most transformative thing. I agree
It
with
is.
you. Connecting with cultures, it's really it's why we do Disrupt Art too, and it's because we want to connect with creators all across the world. It's just, to me, understanding and learning cultures is just interesting. But to your point, when you're in a foreign environment, it forces your brain into another.
The brain is like a sponge. It absorbs everything. Yeah, and if you don't get used to that plasticity, it starts to be more rigid.
That's exactly right.
And if it's funny because the people that I've met at least in my life, that are very not flexible, usually they haven't traveled that much.
Yeah, and what you have to guard against, and as we advance in age, that we don't become so rigid. It's a guest on my podcast, Rodney Williams, said this. He said the most important skill to his success was learning how to learn, and learning is a constant journey.
Yeah.
And the challenge when people gather a little bit of knowledge, because none of us have a ton. Even the smartest of people have a very small corner of knowledge. But when you have success, you then become hardened to actually understanding new perspectives, which is why going to a new country humbles you, because you realize you don't know any of this. You don't know any of the culture. You don't understand any of the language.
The history.
For all of your knowledge, you are a baby here. And it's that humbling reminder when you stand in front of the ocean of how small you really are. And when people lose that perspective, they lose their way. Even Albert Einstein, one of my favorite people in terms to learn from, and obviously a genius, and he was a humanitarian, but he didn't see the next evolution of physics. He actually rejected it, right? Even though he was the founder of it, he rejected that was coming because, again, rigidity can go in the mind once you have something. So I think that's the challenge to everyone is to keep that perspective and a humble perspective when it comes to knowledge. All right.
I fully agree.
Yes. So all right. So final question.
Yeah.
All right. You have 3 advisors for business and life. Who are these advisors and why?
Paul McCartney, the first one.
Who's that?
Paul McCartney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
I think he's been so creative, and really creativity to me, I think you build that ability to be creative. You can be born with more or less capabilities to be creative, but really to me humans are excellent in creativity, and it's really what's driving us and everything. So I think Paul has huge amount of creativity, and I really admire him for that. I also like writing songs and music. So
you're a music, okay.
Yeah, but very bad music, but
All right, all right. We're gonna have to drop some music on Disrupt Art on the platform. All right, we're gonna have to one of your creative sides. We're gonna get you to drop some music. All right, now that I know this, okay.
I'll send you something if you want, but don't play it. Don't play it in live, at least. And then I don't know. My mother for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
My mother would be on my list too.
Yeah. And who else?
Well, that's 3. That's 3. You don't have to. Doesn't mean you don't love the other people. I'm sure there Meredith. I'm sure Dr. Cohen would be on the list. There's lots of other people that have been helpful in both of our lives.
If I start getting personal,
you'll be there forever. I wanted you just to go with the top 3.
Okay, well.
Javier,
we just gonna leave it there, Paul.
No, you're good. Javier, it's been a pleasure.
I'm glad you come on. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're here at MidwestCon 2023. Rob Richardson with Disrupt Art. We're taping at the Digital Futures Building. It's been an honor to have Javier Viaña. His company is Reason. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you understand explainable AI and what it means. But until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.